Recently, I got a call from an old acquaintance who was very upset about our video where we talked about FX audio. Is it high-end or not high-end? And the reason for his outrage was that I didn't completely trash FX audio, saying it's not high-end at all, that it's just lousy mass-market stuff. But I think those who watched that video till the end understood that we're not talking about high-end. And he asked me to publicly apologize and say that this is not high-end. And right now I'm publicly saying that this is not high-end. It doesn't meet the following 4 parameters. It doesn't meet the power requirement. It doesn't meet the amplitude frequency characteristic, where at 20 kilohertz it has +1 decibel at high frequencies at 8 ohms and -1 decibel at 4 ohms. For it to be high-end, it should have 0.05 there, so it doesn't meet the second parameter either, and most importantly, it doesn't meet the noise requirements. And if you look at the specifications, where we have noise and signal-to-noise ratio, this equipment should have something close to 120, so the noise should be at least half as low, around 30 to 40 microvolts, and then everything will be fine. But it means it produces noise, so this microchip will make a little noise on high-sensitivity speakers on the tweeter. Formally, it doesn't pass. This isn't high-end, I'm telling everyone honestly. This FX audio, it's not high-end. Yeah, it's not high-end. But I think there was a more serious reason for this call. I think we need to look at the problem as a whole. In the information environment, there is a very tough confrontation between high-end and others. But let's look at all this marketing and actually determine what we're talking about, because the word high-end is used very often too. We tend to think that it's bad. No, it has a specific definition. And let's look at this entire market. Let's look at all the marketing together. I specifically prepared this video, so let's see what's what. Let's take a look at how, first of all, the global market is distributed in terms of money. Right? So here's a diagram with the statistics for 2022. This is the number of adults in the world. Yes, if we look, it's half of the adult population earns less than 10,000 a year. Then we have this. 33% in the world earn from 10,000 to 100,000. In wealthier countries, these are educated, smart professionals. Managers and top specialists typically earn up to 100,000. But on average, they earn somewhere between 10 and 100,000, and they still have something left for various purchases. So this segment is solvent. And then we have another good segment. 11% of the entire population has an income of more than 100,000 and up to 1 million per year. Well, those who make up 1.5% or 1 or 2%, they don't come into our stores and they don't talk to us. So we have 3 large segments, and that premium or high-end segment, that's where the purchasing power is. These are all rational people. They are educated. This is small business. These are educated people who understand. These are engineers, specialists, and so on and so forth. And for this market, we have, let's say, hi-fi. These are all very rational people who make purchases. They count their money and make sure they get the right result for what they pay. The advantage of this segment is they have more money and often want the best. And here we mostly have high-end. Here we have a rational buyer. If we also look at it from a slightly different perspective, that is, look at the distribution of when and what we think about. If we don't have food, if we're cold, we might not even bother with theater, music, and all sorts of other things. And quite a lot of people in the world live in poverty. When we're warm and have everything we need, we have psychological needs. We start thinking about other things, we read books, go to the theater, our family and friends become very important to us, and so on. We live an interesting and fulfilling life. We're not just surviving, and among all of this, we have prestige. We have feelings. When we listen to good music, we have feelings. It gives us energy. And in this segment, here is music, musical equipment. The whole music industry works for us. We need it, which means there is demand for it. Well, when we already have everything, then we have slightly different, to some extent, in order to be valued in the world, we do different things. And here is the main phase. Here we get emotions, that's why we still buy something. And to a large extent, our marketing works for these needs, these necessities. If you look at the market, watch YouTube and so on, there are two irreconcilable opponents here. Right? High-end audio versus hi-fi audio. Some call others different names, saying they are deceiving people and so on and so on. And others say that those down there don't even know what good sound is. With their semi-budget devices, they can just go far away. But that's a wrong idea about what we're talking about. These are just two different segments, and here I made an analysis. So we have hi-fi audio, right? High fidelity, high accuracy of reproduction. Here we have standards. Here is the studio. Here are the standards. Here are the parameters. Here are the measurements. And the definition of hi-fi is accurate and faithful sound reproduction according to measurable standards. Key factors are low distortion, flat frequency response, and high accuracy. And the key feature is the focus on objective measurements. Therefore, it meets standards such as total harmonic distortion, intermodulation distortion full range, and signal-to-noise ratio. Mass-produced but high-quality consumer equipment, balanced in terms of price-to-quality ratio. So here we look at what we get for this price very, very strictly. The focus is on purity and realism of sound. As for high-end means extreme and absolutely the best possible sound, regardless of price, complexity, or practicality. It's about more than accuracy. It's also about expressiveness and sound refinement. Here, we want the maximum, and it doesn't matter how much it costs. And the distinctive features are often handmade production, small batches, niche companies, and the use of rare materials and designs. We have beryllium speakers there. I even saw somewhere that there are diamond ones, discrete, class A, and so on and so forth. The components are optimized beyond reasonable economic feasibility. We use only the very, very best. Attention should also be paid to measurements and subjective listening. But lately I see that measurements have faded away and subjective listening has started to dominate. Sometimes the price is 5 to 10 times higher than hi-fi. Did I just say 10? No, it is 5 to 20 times higher. What do we need to learn from this? That we strive for the absolute best possible sound, regardless of price, complexity, or even practicality. So, don't come here with your price-to-quality ratio arguments. Here, it's only about quality, and we're trying to somehow enhance that sound. Sometimes this even leads to the point where a linear amplitude-frequency response of the speaker isn't really accepted. We even add a bit of color to it. That's all fine. It's good if it grabs us emotionally and we like it. And don't bother me with your measurements. There's another principle in the world where we count money. We want to get the best for our money. For those who have heard of it, according to the Pareto principle, with 20% of the effort, we can get 80% of the result. I would say, in audio today, since hi-fi has advanced so much, we can get 90%, maybe even 90% of the result with just 20% of the cost. I would put it this way: everything we can achieve in an untreated room, and with these costs, we reach the maximum we can get in an untreated room. And then, for the last 10%, the costs increase disproportionately. Disproportionately, yes. We want more quality, we pay much more money, and our quality improves a little, but if we want the absolute maximum, we're ready to pay for it. Well, here's an explanation. This principle works everywhere. It works by this principle: 20% of the city's roads carry 80% of the cars. Yeah, well, what else do we have? Selling 20% of the products brings in 80% of the revenue. In general, I agree with the Pareto principle, but why do we need this Pareto principle? It helps you focus on what's most important. So, we invest money in what's most important. We invest time in what's most important. Efficiency increases and we spend less time on low-yield activities. So we have enough education and brain power to choose what's important and what's less important. But let's go back. This also applies to audio. With relatively little expense, we can get very good sound quality if we understand how it works. When my acquaintance called me, he was really bothered that we didn't completely trash that TPA 3255 amplifier one-sidedly. And well, sometimes what do people tell us? High-end enthusiasts say that people there don't know how to listen, and in their opinion, 90% of people are deaf. They don't hear what they're supposed to hear. But there's a mistake in that statement. It's not 90% of people who are deaf, it's 100% of people who are deaf. Basically, we as individuals don't hear very well. And I want to show you something. There was an experiment conducted on sound engineers, the ones who create recordings and so on. And if you look at this young man, they took, I think, 10 young men. It was a very long video, produced, if I'm not mistaken, in Russia in 2013. There were about 10 of them. All of them are young. If you look at this guy, well, I estimate that he's not 30 yet. I would say he's 25. At 25, your hearing covers the entire range. These are sound engineers. They work with music every day. The engineers provided them with music and different monitor speakers. These are all well-known names of near-field and mid-field monitor manufacturers, mostly near-field. So they were listening from about a meter away, but they didn't know which one was playing. They played different genres of music, everything, and let them evaluate. And you see that there's an ugly duckling among them, the S30, that was designed in Soviet times. It's a near-field speaker with factory distortion from 3 to 5%. And if they added some soup to it, that means the lows. Anyway, with their sensitive hearing, they listened, and this is how their evaluation turned out. More is better, and if we look, it's very spread out. This means the sensory level, when we have no support, is quite poor. And look, this lousy speaker got a decent rating, so the sensory level, our hearing level is poor. As individuals, we don't hear well, so we try to average out different things. How is this compensated? Because in the world, we've managed to survive quite well with this poor hearing, and we haven't been eaten. So, here we have the sensory level. Most importantly, we hear here, but there's a powerful processor that analyzes, right? It's a really powerful digital signal processor. Well, look at this example. If we go out to the river in the spring, we can listen to the birds there, hear how beautifully they sing. Then we take a microphone or a phone and record it, then play it back at home. And what do we hear? We hear the river flowing very strongly. There's a road in the distance where cars are passing by, and somewhere else there's a forest. And somewhere in the background there are also some birds. But if we focus our attention, we can really pick out those birds. They're singing for us. That means we can process this incoming information very thoroughly and then interpret it to the point where we can even fill in the gaps. So, what about listening? That's a question where we can always argue. For example, if someone says, "Come to our showroom, take a look, listen to how a good system should sound," people just don't know what a good system sounds like. It seems like everything is correct, but we're missing one thing. We're missing the understanding of how it should be. So, if we were to really compare objectively speaking, we need at least one system that sounds right, and all the others should sound the same way. If we look at it, well, we could choose what's closest to us in terms of three-way acoustics, so that would be mid-field monitors. Like this Neumann, for example. If there was a Neumann there, and we were selling one, then another one, then another, which speaker sounds like this? Because that's how it sounds in the studio in this case, but no one would go for that. They'll say, no one is interested in a sterile sound. Let's add some lows and highs, etc. So with this listening test, If you like it, that's fine, but objectively it's difficult. Objectively it's difficult. That's why you need to both measure and listen. But lately, I've noticed that high-end doesn't measure anything at all. It only listens. It only listens and talks. So, there's a trap here. Usually what my colleague told me was, come to us, there will be 5 of us, and we'll show you what good music or good listening means. And here everything is quite meticulous. You need to set things up, you need to measure what levels you're putting in. This listening session is a tricky trap. It's a tricky trap. What else did high-end do? Since in high-end we have a lot of emotions and we have to, well, value. We have to convey that it's worth the money. We do a slightly different kind of marketing here. So, a whole range of companies like Panasonic have released high-end equipment, which is good. Quality equipment that has no price limitations in order to make it truly good. Another brand, Pioneer, launched TAD or Technical Audio Devices. This is also a very good manufacturer of the very best. Some companies launched product lines under the Sony brand, like Sony ES and many others did the same. But this is an example of how they try to create a separate club for those who listen to the very best, the finest audio that money can buy. So, here we have a club for those who want the very, very best. We have an elite segment. It's here, and it caters to a different audience, where we produce equipment with absolutely no compromises. If here we produce equipment where we calculate how much it should cost, and then all the engineering efforts are focused on fitting into that price and making it good, here we make the absolute best, regardless of the price. And when we stand out in this separate club, the high-end equipment club, we use different marketing methods to attract our clients. If you look at the notes, the high-end audio industry combines revenues from the world of luxury and high technology. We invest in both design and circuitry, emphasizing heritage and storytelling. This is the usual approach. If you look on YouTube, there are many bloggers who talk to each other, visit each other, show very good equipment, and rely on brands. If you analyze how they structure their entire conversation, they are good salesmen. To establish this association with the equipment, they talk about the founder's stories, patents in the product culture, the history, how much they invest in science, and so on. Showing the very best production processes, casing processing, crossover assembly, crossover quality, driver selection. They also number different things there, so you have exclusivity. Very good equipment is used throughout the entire production process. There are no failures anywhere, and there is no cutting corners on quality. Experimental marketing. These are demonstrations. So, you need a lot of demo products. You should have a showroom and invite people to the showroom where everything sounds great. They also work with specifications, but this is becoming more and more difficult because the lower end, due to the latest chips, is getting very good specifications. You can't really go far, but we just create perfect sound conditions, which you don't have at home, but when you listen there, well, it's incredible how it sounds. I want it to sound the same at home. This is good equipment. We invite people for personal listening sessions, talk, drink coffee together, discuss good music, and also take them to studios. Because in this market we sell different processing materials, rooms and everything, and of course exhibitions, it's the same marketing. In general, we invest seriously in marketing to prove that this equipment is good, and the main task is to prove that the way it sounds is worth the money. It's a difficult job. It's a difficult job. I've heard of limited editions and artificial scarcity, but I haven't experienced it myself. Maybe it was before, when there was a huge demand for this segment. There were prosperous years. The 80s, 90s, in the early 2000s the world was wealthy, but now the world isn't as rich anymore. So we invite bloggers with a name, engineers with a name, and we do various validations, and they also claim that it's cool. These are reviews, measurements, awards, recommendations in various magazines, and many other things. Audiophiles trust independent proven sources. But this part has deteriorated because due to the development of the digital environment, there are hardly any magazines left, and they've lost their influence. And there are a lot of imposters who do this poorly. That's what I would call it. But still, if we look in the digital environment, we can find 6 Moon or Infinite Fidelity. They do exist. I'll show you an example of what it looks like. There is a portal called Absolute Sound where we can see high-end developments. In fact, this is the kind of equipment that has no shortcomings and has excellent design. If you look at this equipment, well, it's tasteful, really tasteful, really tasteful. Here it's all described. You can also listen to other devices, see what it records, the insides are shown. Well, the insides are like any electronic device, I wouldn't say there's more. But when it's closed, it's very, very, very impressive. Here you also have the specifications and prices, and in general, well, the specifications are excellent. But for those who like, I don't know, counting zeros before the decimal point, this isn't for them. Basically, it's a very good device, and it can put out more than 200 watts at 8 ohms, and even more at 4 ohms. But the price is high. The price is high. And what does high-end face? Because of the latest chips, because of Class D, it means they are getting closer in terms of specs, and it's just hard to determine if this one is really worth it. So it turns out like this: if you paid that price, it should be significantly better, but if it's not significantly better, that's when a serious problem arises in trying to justify that it's really better, so we have to make a real effort. Brand structure. We've already looked at it. Many brands separate, completely separate, this line of high, well, super quality equipment at a high price. Well, to reach the end user, there needs to be a serious dealer network, and it has to be one where the dealers actually work. That means I have to give a significant part of the profit to these dealers, so that they run like crazy and sell this product, set up showrooms, gather stock, and so on and so on. Since the market is rich, this money exists, and without a dealer network, it's almost impossible to sell purely online. You really need to show that it works. But the dealer is also given demo kits, training materials on how to position everything, installation of active systems, setting up limiters, digital signal processor, and profit protection. There are dealer prices, a lot of things. They have to hustle. If they don't, they lose their dealership. But if they hustle and still don't sell, either the market is gone or they don't know how to sell. It's a tough business here. Educational content. So they teach how to listen, how to understand what good sound is, what normal sound is, and so on and so forth. Why does it work? It lowers skepticism and builds trust. Plus, this format is getting tougher. Because before, the difference between this high-end equipment and good equipment for mass production was significant. But now, due to the development of electronics, yes, the cases here in high-end are better, I mean the enclosures. But this lower level has improved so much that the difference is getting smaller and smaller, which means prices are also going down in this market. What can we replace it with? We can replace it by working more, creating different club systems where we talk, show things, but also add something extra. But overall, this business, it's getting harder. It's getting harder. There's a lot of talking to each other in this environment, and people exchange equipment. If they sell, they also sell within the club, because it's hard to sell outside the club. And so this club system is maintained. We know each other, we talk to each other, everyone is very, very happy. When someone buys something new, they invite others to come and take a look. How can the club system be flawed if everyone gets along so well? This happens in business and everywhere else. We lack a critical element. In business, and especially in engineering, there must always be someone who takes on the role of asking uncomfortable questions, demanding to check information, show sources, show references, show documents. And this person makes the club really work hard to identify what works and what doesn't. When our club is closed, there's a much greater chance of making a mistake, a much greater chance of making a mistake. This critical mind, this chaos, is necessary. Partnership. Of course, there are different artists, studios. We talk together and support this buzz. One person gets more studio recordings, others get support, knowing that this equipment is good. Price, architecture, and signals of premium quality. Well, basically, this is borrowed from IKEA, and for those who know, IKEA is the company that developed the principle of the modern supermarket. And they were the first to introduce the principle where you enter the supermarket through one door, and the first thing you see are exclusive, very expensive items. You keep going further and further, and there are those first exclusive things. They plant this idea in your mind, and when you get to the area where the real sales and turnover happen, the relatively expensive items seem cheap to you. And it's like you've lowered your threshold, thinking everything is expensive. It was expensive there, but here it's cheap. There's a science to this. Price architecture, assortment selection, and more. And that's why this club system is kind of a way to isolate from the main market so that we have the right price balance. That's also great. It's a great art. It's a great art to create something like this. There's much discussion about after-sales service. We don't abandon clients and respond quickly if they need anything. All of this costs money. It means it's all worth the price you paid, but then no one abandons you. There's service and guarantees. We also call to check if we can help or if everything is okay. Everything sounds great there, and people with money love it. That's important. We deliver to your home, install everything turnkey, connect it all, help you get the best out of it, and also help with setup. People start listening, and everything is really good, which is important. In my opinion, all companies do this. Well, exhibitions, closed events, high-end has its own exhibition, and they live their own life. Well, I watched the latest exhibition video. Something in this segment is already declining. Because people have become more careless. They work so much on the place where they listen. So, many companies simply don't have money. The rich still have some, but the others don't, and the segment is suffering. I also did this review titled The Main Threats That High-End is Facing. And I think that's the reason for that call, that, well, something became difficult with this segment. It became difficult. And the main threats that high-end faces are macroeconomic instability and a decline in consumer confidence. The thing is, the world has become unpredictable, and overall, it has started earning less. So, the majority of people are getting poorer. And even official reports show that sales in this segment are declining. Geopolitical conflicts and regional instability. Well, as you can see, the post-Soviet space has gone crazy and started a war. It's absolute nonsense. So, big markets and Western money are being invested in absolutely nothing. If we hear about war budgets, they're in the billions. Everyone is getting poorer. Everyone is getting poorer. The consequences. Logical chains are collapsing. There are delays in deliveries, especially from European manufacturers. A drop in sales in unstable regions is obvious. Increased logistics costs. Disruptions in supply chains, rising component costs. I've also faced this in recent years. Different plugs, wires, everything is getting more expensive, including for my devices. I'm thinking about raising the price by at least 5, maybe even 10%. It's everywhere. That's because of the chips. Everything is expensive, especially if the equipment is produced in small quantities. You're the last in line when it comes to chip supplies. First come the big contracts and the small ones come later. That means we're already buying from others. We're not buying components directly from the manufacturers. We're buying from component dealers, and that's all. Well, like with Digico or others, our price goes up. We can't get the components. So the equipment takes longer to produce, everything becomes more expensive, the whole process is more costly, and expenses are rising. The world order is collapsing. Large markets like the American one have imposed tariffs, making everything more complicated and expensive. As costs rise, people have less money, and they start counting their money and move from one category of purchases to another, but not from high-end to hi-fi. They start counting and watching. A generational change. That means some of those who really grew up with high-end, who grew up with good stereo are leaving and others are coming in, and they have different demands and a different approach. So we have a decline of interest in traditional audiophile systems, these big racks, big equipment, large cases and so on. They don't care, right? There's a growing shift in demand towards wireless active smart devices. A friend called. He said there were people who are hard of hearing and they're listening to a Bluetooth speaker. He was really upset about it. But this is happening, it's happening, and we can say that they're all dumb or we have to adapt. Let's get a good Bluetooth speaker, the very best one. It can be made really well. And many brands, they somehow ignore all these changes, the digital transformation. They work the old-fashioned way, and they also teach all these people who sell their equipment the old methods. No, you have to move forward. This digital era, it's coming. Everyone here will just be left behind if they don't adapt. Changing something at the last moment won't help. Prices for raw materials and supplies are rising everywhere, making everything more expensive for me too. There's also high competition and market saturation in the premium segment. Basically, there are big margins there. Everyone wants in. Everything is getting more expensive. New players are showing up. The Chinese are trying to get in. And with dumping, prices are being driven down everywhere. Overall, it's getting really tough. And practically, if you're an average or not very big player and you don't have different businesses that compensate for each other, there's a high chance you'll disappear from the market altogether. So, we're buying equipment that won't have any support. Take Macintosh, for example. Their amplifiers aren't profitable, and the company has shifted its focus. They invested a lot of money and resources. Now they produce car systems. Many people don't know, but Macintosh switched. They have a profitable department. It's car audio systems. They also hold this high-end market which they spent a long time building, but the profitability isn't there. Macintosh will probably survive, but those who specialize will have a hard time. There is a rise in expectations regarding digital and AI features. Basically, because the high-end market is declining, many specialized manufacturers don't have the money for innovation. Here, the investments are completely different. Here it's about programming, a lot of new people, and they can't keep up. They start putting other companies' developments into their own brands' boxes more and more. They don't have their own work. And it turns out that in a nice box we get hi-fi equipment. The marketing is still there, but the equipment is already just hi-fi. This price that we're asking for, it's hard to justify it. And it turns out that even in some areas, there aren't many manufacturers of new technologies. Everyone knows and recognizes the components that are used there. This trick doesn't work well either. Also, there's a shift from traditional dedicated listening rooms to reduced spaces. By the way, there are fewer and fewer people who build a studio for music, create an open interior and so on, and there in the corner you set up your listening area without any sound treatment. People say, please, we need a device that works in this room. The task becomes even harder to show that this speaker works so well, but in this room, it won't work as well. We have a limitation in that our room is not designed for very good listening. It becomes difficult to show that this is good. There is such a tendency, so we can choose simpler equipment, which is sufficient. And here is the decline in sales of large-scale systems, where the biggest money is one transaction and a lot of money. There is a growing demand for compact active models. What not to buy? There is also no bottom there, but there is demand, whether it adapts to this market or not. The need to adapt to new forms of use. Overall, you need to study and decide what to do. I can't say more. I agree. I've seen this trend. Competition from premium soundbars and integrated systems. But what everyone used to call cheap stuff is improving in quality. Everything is integrated there and people are satisfied. They don't make a separate listening room. They're fine with it. It's good enough. This is a very, very big risk for the segment. People are simply satisfied with something that's not the very best. And I would also say that even with the whole strategy that I use as well, with small expenses we achieve about 90% of what's possible. And for listening to music, that's enough for me. I could talk for a long time about how there's something missing, some little detail, but to enjoy it, getting into the music, it works for me. If you do everything right, it sounds really good. Basically, we're going into serious minimalism here, and I picked one example of a power amplifier, but it's a simple one. This is how it changes. Back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and even the early 2000s, we had a clearly defined price range. Where hi-fi was different, so hi-fi equipment was here. All the designs were from 80 to 120 watts, and they cost from 100 to 600. For 100, we could buy a 35-watt amplifier, and for 600, we could buy a 100-watt amplifier. And it was determined by the fact that when you come up and lift it, they're light, all of them. The higher the price, the heavier it gets, with larger transformers, power supplies, and heat sinks. It really can do it. It's such a trickster, but it still sounds good. And if we made it 300 watts, yeah, from 1500 to 5000, but up to 500, that was already, well, a certain kind of high-end segment. Those were the devices that were being sold. That is, it has more power, and power plays a big role in the subjective experience. If there isn't enough power, you just can't get the lows right. Peak power is important. It's here. This sounds surprisingly confident. It's good that I bought this one for 1500 and not that cheap one for 600, right? I got all my money back. If you go higher with big speakers, they have their own sound, which is the best. There's no real limit. Prices range from 5 to 3000. There were strong players there, and Macintosh, Bristol, Acoface, and so on played there. I know Ted had the 1000 series, but that's hard to beat. You connect any speaker at any volume and they deliver. Any good speaker, and everyone got what they paid for. For your money, you got the most solid proof that the investment was right. If you have a big income or a big business and you paid 30,000, but it sounded amazing, right? And here are a few examples. Bryston, it's my favorite company, a strong company. Yes, it's not cheap, but I think the price for the quality this company delivers is more or less fair. Would I buy it? No, I wouldn't. I'm fine with a bit less of this elitism. Acoface is also a very strong Japanese company. Even now, their devices have a high price on the secondary market. But if you look inside, the electronics are the same. And when there's less money, the information space increases, you get more information. It's hard to sell, yes. Prices are high. I want to show you a really serious bandit. So I work with Ice Power. Ice Power also released a flagship. This is a complex design. The whole team worked on it for 7 years to create this unit. And it's a very serious beast. There's very little information about it in the high-end space because it's available in open retail and no one can really make much money off it. It's impossible to profit from it due to the open pricing. And the specs here are off the charts. It can do everything. Look, a 600-watt amplifier at 8 ohms at 4 ohms, 30 microvolts. That's incredible. So, such a sensitive speaker won't make noise. It works with all loads. A 3.8 kilowatt power supply, various service functions, even built-in functions, the so-called wake up from signal. You can connect it, and when you turn on the preamplifier, it wakes up and starts playing. When you turn it off, after 18 minutes, well, after half an hour, it turns off by itself. You don't have to control it. There's also 12 volts, and everything is built into this unit. But let's take a look at how it looks up close. Here's my product. I work for the amateur radio market, and since anyone can buy this unit in America or Europe, I design cases and wiring for them, and they can buy this unit and assemble it themselves. This is a product for the amateur market, and whenever they assemble them, they're always surprised at how well everything works. And here is this unit, this one, where it's 80 volts. It outputs 2 times 600, and its pure, absolutely clean power is about 450 to 500 watts. Where are those 00003? This unit has a bigger brother. For home use you don't need it, but for larger systems, maybe. It's a kilowatt per channel. You see that the voltage of these capacitors is higher. This one outputs a kilowatt per channel. And you can control any speaker. It's made very well. Here, 4 channels output stereo. These 4 channels are in a bridge configuration. Everything you can get out of a modern good amplifier is here. Look at the size, right? It's a kilowatt per channel. And look at Macintosh, at other class A and B amps. There, power is a big problem, and power for the subwoofer is important. You have a very large reserve. You're always working in the linear section. Very often, what fans of class A and B amplifiers tell me is, when I connect my amplifier and listen at higher volumes, the mids in rock music just scream. The question is, why do they scream? But when I tried yours, it's always kind of balanced, and when there's not enough power, the bass doesn't come up and the highs start to stick out. They see it as a feature, but it's actually a bug. Yes, it's a bug. The amplifier just isn't powerful enough to play everything accurately and properly, but this one performs incredibly well. That happens sometimes. The amateur market knows Hypex well, and Hypex invests a lot to be present there, with reviews and everywhere. These ones don't show up there at all. You can buy these units at retail, but the professional Hypex line is unavailable. Their professional line is good. I believe this unit is the world's best today. If you want pure, neutral, perfectly controlled sound without any coloration, this is the ideal unit. And here I want to show you a major European retailer who specializes in audio components, and they have almost the entire Ice Power lineup that you can buy directly. For example, this unit is interesting. It's based on the TPA 3255 2x200 watts with a built-in power supply in a compact size. And you can use different designs there for near-field monitors or bookshelf speakers. But the most important thing is this flagship of theirs, the 1200 ACE2. And look, the price here is $429. 8 items are in stock, they're still buying more, so they're selling well. In general, when it comes to the high-end market, they try not to talk about this unit. It's too good and too close to the very top models, and it costs relatively little. It's the Bandit that breaks the entire established price order. Well, okay, this one is up to 600 watts per channel, but it has a big brother. Here it is. The 2000 model, yes, €100 more, and there's a kilowatt per channel. You don't need a kilowatt at home, but if you have huge speakers and a large room. There we had those that cost from 5,000 to 30,000. Then this one comes in. It's €500, put it in a case, and for about 1,000 you get a kilowatt unit. This disrupts the established order. In general, in such amateur circles, they try not to talk about this unit, and it's available for retail sale openly. No one will profit from it, but they'll make money with Hypex. At least it maintains a certain dealer network and gives part of the profit to the dealer. But these guys decided that the professional market orders from them a year in advance, and as for the amateur market, they just don't allow others to develop. I think that's their strategy. That's why they're selling it. They're also addressing the issue. Ice Power addresses the issue that if someone needs a test unit, they can buy it here. It's serviced by another company, including warranties and everything. Overall, it also makes sense from a business perspective. It makes sense. And Ice Power is developing rapidly. Yes, it's developing rapidly. And my personal opinion is that regarding amplifiers, since we have both power and quality, we're getting closer to that. I'll use the English good enough, meaning that in general it starts to exceed the hearing threshold, and then even in this high-end environment, that little bit sounds just a bit better. Or to say that no one understands anything. No, these blocks sound so good that they definitely don't interfere with listening to music in the highest quality. high power, low noise. It's a complex task, but it's been solved. It's produced in huge quantities. It's an industrial unit, and it will be on the market for many years. If anything gets replaced, it will definitely be replaced with the same geometry, so you can swap out these units. Basically, you get a design where it's easy to provide warranties and ensure durability, and I think that's important. Once you've spent a certain amount of money, it means you have support, and that's how it's handled here. What's the key issue? The key issue is that there are no intermediaries, and dealers are struggling. These kinds of situations arise, and it's hard to sell this high-end equipment. Either it has to be fundamentally better, but hi-fi quality has gotten so close to high-end that nobody even talks about quality anymore. We're talking about design, we're talking about the perfect casing, we're talking about certain services. Life is getting more and more complicated. Well, here it's about how the specs look and all the technical parameters. You can get almost up to 500 watts of peak power from this amplifier. And it turns out that the bass plays on any speaker very, very convincingly. And how it plays. Here I found an email from someone who bought my kit and then assembled the amplifier. Quick feedback. I'm very happy with the product. It kicked ass in very possible way. Well, Denmark is an engineering country, a very strong engineering country, a wealthy country, and people can buy almost any equipment. Salaries are good there. But for some reason, they chose mine. As you can see, that's why this unit is a bandit. If we take that kilowatt unit, it just destroys, absolutely destroys this whole chain. Not 5,000 euros. You can do it for under 1,000. The unit itself costs about 550. I sell my designs for 260 plus shipping, and you assemble it yourself. You end up with an amplifier for under 1,000 euros. Can it be done cheaper? Actually, no. If you really want to make an uncompromising amplifier, it's going to cost 1,000. You can estimate for yourself that a good amplifier should cost about €1 per watt per channel. If we take, say, a 500 watt amplifier, that means it's 1,000. It's 1,000. Well, that's even better, but in general, if you take a TPA, it costs almost nothing per watt, but I think that won't last long. Once the market strengthens, the Chinese will increase prices. And all these amplifiers they're selling now, I think they already cost 250, getting close to 300. Well, 300. And for the integrated amplifier, they'll raise the price. But for those who want to do it themselves, the Chinese sell different modules. This is a good module, and you can assemble it yourself, put it in a case, and you'll get 2 times 250 watts if you build a good power supply. Yes, you also need a good power supply here, and for about 100 to 150 euros, you can assemble a pretty powerful amplifier. Why do I have this amplifier? A lot of people come and say, the Chinese, in all the reviews, the Chinese show that their amplifier is better, and then I give them this. Here, take it, listen to it at home, see how it works. Actually, it's a good unit. It has good components, all the filters are properly set, and then they can try it out. Usually it happens like this, especially for those who have some old speakers, and they're still using some old class AB amplifier. Wow, it's really going all out here. But if we're talking about the last 10%, it's not here. Then you have ICE power, then you have Hypex, and I believe that Class D, only Class D has a future. Their price to quality ratio is absolutely unbeatable. It's unbeatable. And that's also one of the reasons why high-end is struggling. The market is changing a lot, and it shows. The difference between absolute high-end and that kind of hi-fi where everything is well thought out and reasonably priced is getting smaller and smaller. This is especially true for digital to analog converters. They're starting to become inexpensive and work really well. Since there are chips in there, everyone in the world, expensive, high-end, or simple, uses the same chips. It's a simple device. You can put it in a big case, but usually that big case is pretty empty. It's pretty empty. And because information is so accessible, it's impossible to get a big margin. There are some Chinese companies that are trying to make a segment of 600 to 700, 1,000 and more, and you can work with that. But since the Chinese sell directly, they don't really have a widespread dealership principle. It's impossible to make money. Overall, the model is collapsing in the high-end segment. There's really nothing to sell. Well, this one costs less than 200 euros. I bought it to give to those enthusiasts who want to listen, to hear how all the modern stuff sounds. Usually I give them this kind of digital to analog converter. I give them the TPA 3255 and I give them ice power so they can at least get a sense of it. Do they even need 1,000? Or is everything fine for them if there's a Chinese TPA 3255? And after that, everything else that's available, there's a whole array of them. It's hard to sell, really, it's hard to sell. I see that there's a real difference when it comes to a powerful good Class D amplifier for the future, either from Hypex or from Ice Power. Well, there aren't many other easily available companies. So the high-end market will have to seriously think about what to do. I think in the high-end segment the speaker remains. The speaker is still complex and the high-end speaker is 90% good. But they've also started cutting corners. You need to look for a good representative to make sure everything is high quality. And I just want to show you one website that the Chinese have flocked to, which measures all their latest developments in digital to analog conversion and other areas. There's a website like this. It's called Audio Science Review, and there's an engineer in America who bought a bunch of equipment and measures all the possible current developments there. The Chinese have flocked to it, and all the latest Chinese developments use hi-fi marketing methods. Everything gets measured, and since this is done on the latest American chips, the measurements are extremely good. And if you look, there's such a variety of different devices here, and all of them measure really, really well. This means that this preliminary part has been solved, and solved relatively cheaply. Among them is SMSL, which specializes in high-end if you want the very, very best. SMSL has such an advanced lineup. There's also WEM, which you can buy locally. But in any case, some things are already solved at such a level that you just can't do better. You can't do better. And it turns out that it's hard, very hard, to justify the price of an expensive device. I've seen that the Chinese already have certain developments where they put several conversion chips into a single digital to analog converter. So you can choose from a manufacturer that's a bit better. There's switching inside. So it turns out this is marketing. Like, I have this chip, I have that chip, that also gets negated. In general, a lot of things are changing. And in conclusion, what I want to say to all the critics of high-end, the problem isn't that someone said something, the problem is that the market is changing. Seriously, the entire market is fundamentally changing, it's getting poorer, and we need to adapt. And the problem isn't that people don't understand that this is good sound. That's not it. The hi-fi market now nearly matches high-end in technical specs. High-end lacks funding, and no one is investing in this segment anymore. New developments aren't that far ahead of the main ones, so I think we'll still have to make major adjustments. The arrival of the Chinese is causing the earning model to collapse. That's the most accurate thing. There's no distribution, and if there is, the requirements are very high, and no one can get in. I'm saying companies like Ice Power, who put their modules out in retail, they're also breaking this model. It's a bandit, and it's destroying the most profitable market. It will become increasingly difficult to prove it's a bad guy. Because the difference between maybe the very, very, very best and Ice Power is small. Maybe it exists. But As I said, I only work in the segment up to untreated rooms, and for those who are into amateur radio, those who want to do it themselves. But many of my clients who write such positive reviews are from the high-end segment. They used to invest, but now they don't want to anymore. They have good speakers and everything, but now they buy a cheaper new amplifier. It's very close. It outperforms the high-end they bought before, and sometimes it loses, sometimes it wins by a landslide. And these new high-end amplifiers for $23,000, how can you even sell something like that? I don't know who you could even sell that to. It's impossible, and we'll have to accept that. And once again, I confirm that designs based on the TPA 3255 are not high-end, but overall I think the problems of the whole industry are obvious.